What's up guys, it's Mr. Ink from West Valley Middle School, and today I'm going to be teaching you all how to draw a city in one-point perspective. First thing that you're going to see on the screen is a time lapse. It'll last a little over a minute, and then I'll come back on screen and explain the 7 steps that you're going to follow today to be able to do this yourself. All right, step 1 of this process is just going to be to get your materials together. Step 2 is going to be to draw a vanishing point and some shapes that's going to surface the tops of your buildings. Step 3 is going to be to draw the sides of your buildings. Step 4 is going to be to draw the bottoms of your buildings. Step 5 is going to be draw the windows. Step 6 is going to be to draw the rooftops. And then step 7 is going to be to draw any additional details. All right, step 1, your materials you are going to need for this is going to be a pencil. It's going to be any type of eraser. I have an eraser pen, you don't need anything like that. Pencil sharpener is optional, you don't really have to have one. I like to keep my pencil sharp. Second thing is going to be a ruler. If you have one, if not, I'm using a little piece of cardboard that I just cut off like a thing of oatmeal or cereal. All right, step 2, you're going to be drawing a vanishing point and then just some basic shapes. Doesn't have to be anything elaborate. You'll see that mine are going to be very simple. You can make them as complex as you want to, but for this I would keep them just squares, circles, triangles, and then the vanishing point we'll be referencing a lot. All right, step 3, this is going to be where we start to draw the sides of the buildings, and you're going to be going from each corner closest to the vanishing point, and then using your ruler or your cardboard piece, whatever you've got as a straight edge, to connect that to the vanishing point. I will be going in more detail on this a little later. All right, step 4, we're going to be drawing the bottoms of our buildings. This is going to be one of the quickest and easiest steps. All right, to draw the bottoms, you're just going to want to reference those initial shapes that you drew. But again, I will be going over this in depth a little later. All right, step 5, draw the windows. This will be one of the more time-consuming steps, but it makes probably the biggest difference in what we're going to be doing as far as making it look like a city. For the windows, you will be referencing the vanishing point, and you'll also be referencing those initial shapes, all right, so the tops of your buildings, and I will be going into more depth a little later. Step 6, draw the rooftops. This is also going to be a pretty time-consuming process and a big difference maker. You will be drawing smaller shapes within your initial rooftops, or just your first shapes, and then we're going to be connecting to the vanishing point to draw some smaller walls to create that 3-dimensional ledge. Step 7, additional details. So this is where we're going to really make our cities come to life. You can do as many or as few of these as you want. You don't have to do any of these. This is going to be details like air conditioning units, smokestacks, billboards, different things like that, how to make your buildings look like skyscrapers. This is a very fun step, but does have quite a few different things that we will be reviewing at the end of this lesson. All right, so this is where we're going to get started by drawing the vanishing point. The vanishing point is very important to this whole process. That is what we're going to use to draw the sides of our buildings, as I mentioned earlier. Anything that is vertical, All right, so anything that's coming from the ground up to the sky will be referencing the vanishing point. Now in this step, I'm just going to start by drawing a square here, and then I'll draw some other simple shapes. I'll draw 4 initial shapes. All right, and we do, again, want to keep this pretty simple, especially if this is your very first time doing this. Once you get comfortable, you can come back and do some really complex shapes like stars, multiple-sided shapes. I wouldn't do much more than, 5 or 6 at this point. All right, so after these initial 4 shapes that I draw here, you're going to see me slow the footage down and draw a larger shape. And you can tell that I am making sure that it extends to where it is going to run into that circle and that square there. All right, so basically what I'm doing is I am making sure I'm filling the gaps. I do not want any holes in between my buildings. I want those buildings on the outside to run into my buildings on the inside. And you'll see that more in the coming step. But for right now, I'm just speeding this up and we're good to go to the next step. All right, so now we're moving on to step 3, which is draw the sides of our buildings. So this, you can see me first identifying the corners of that first initial square. All right, so I'm going to line my straight edge up to that first corner and connect that to our vanishing point. This is going to create the size of our buildings, but it's also going to help create the illusion that these buildings are coming up from the ground to the sky, as if we're looking down from an airplane. All right, so this is called bird's eye view. All right, so this is a linear perspective, is a great way to take something that is 2-dimensional and make it look 3-dimensional. All right, so now I'm taking this straight edge that I've made here and I'm lining that up to the outside edges of our circle. Circles don't have any corners, so you just go from the rightmost edge and the leftmost edge and connect those to the vanishing point. So now I'm just kind of freehanding this part here, going from those corners closest to the vanishing point and making a line connected to the vanishing point. It is very important that you stay consistent with this, or your drawing will look off. So now on this outside shape here, you see me bringing the straight edge back out so I can see where to stop as it runs into one of those inside buildings. So I mentioned that this would happen earlier. I wanted to fill in gaps. So you can see how I'm doing that now. All right, so those outside buildings are going to be cut off by the inside buildings because the inside buildings are in front of them. All right, so you're not going to see the whole side of those outside buildings. So you can see me just kind of freehanding this. Now it's okay if you want to create a line that goes through one of those initial inside shapes or initial buildings, but you do want to make sure you erase that. So a tip would be to draw a lot. Make sure that you are doing that. You will be doing quite a bit of erasing, especially if you don't stop like I am here. And you'll see me erase quite a bit in some later steps. All right, but this about wraps it up for this particular step. All right, so next thing we're going to be doing is drawing the bottoms of our buildings. We are now going to move on to step 4, which is to draw the bottoms of our buildings. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is you are going to see me kind of trace the top edges of that initial shape we drew. And I want to make sure that the bottom matches that. So you want to make a small parallel line down towards the bottom. I'm doing that now. All right, so it is at the same angle as the line that is creating the rooftop. And then I need to make one more because we do see 2 sides on this particular building. So I'm going to make sure that I match the top angle and make a small little line down at the bottom. Now on this next shape here, you can see me again kind of tracing that initial side. All right, so the top of the building on that particular side we see, and I'm going to match that line down at the bottom. Now I pushed this line a little back from that first building because that is an outside building. Now I'm on one of my inside buildings, and I'm just going to match that curve of that circle down at the bottom, and I'm going to put that closer towards the vanishing point. Now on this next shape, I'm running my pencil over the top there. All right, so you'll see me do that, and I'm just going to copy that down at the bottom. All right, so you'll see this speed up here in just a second, but what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that the bottoms of my buildings, all right, the lines are just parallel to that top line from that initial shape we drew. Now the outside buildings, their bottoms are going to be back farther than our inside buildings. So hopefully you see that here, And hopefully this step made sense. It's one of the easier steps, I think, but it does make a big difference. All right, moving on to step 5, and that is going to be to draw our windows. So there are 4 different types of windows that we can draw here to create a nice variety in our buildings. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make some small little tick marks on this initial building that we're drawing our windows on, and that's going to serve as a little thing for me to line the vanishing point up with my straight edge. So you're going to see me use my straight edge now, and from each of those tick marks, I'm going to line that up to the vanishing point. So I mentioned earlier that any line that is vertical, so anything that is going up from the ground to the sky, that is going to be connected to our vanishing point. All right, so right now I'm just going from each little tick mark and making sure that I'm lined up with the tick mark as well as the vanishing point and making straight lines. So that is going to be creating vertical windows. And that is one type of window we use in one-point perspective. All right, so I'll just kind of finish this up here, and then we'll talk about the next set of windows. Now, after you do this step, you are going to see me erase those tick marks. You don't want to leave those. That is just something for us to use to make sure that our lines are straight, and something for us to connect from the vanishing point. All right, so I'm erasing those now. And then on this next building, I'm not going to use my straight edge, but I would still encourage you to do so. And I'm just going to draw some horizontal lines. So horizontal lines here, just like the bottoms of our buildings, are going to be referencing the top of our building there. I'm just making parallel lines that match the top, and I'm making them closer together as it gets closer to the bottom. All right, so that's, again, kind of helping the illusion that everything's getting closer together and there's more of them towards the bottom. So now here you're going to see me using my vertical lines. I'm not using my straight edge, but I'm still making sure that my lines are connected to the vanishing point. And then I'm also going to do horizontal lines. Now on this circular building, I'm just going to curve my lines, just like I did on the previous building there. All right, and I'm going to do the same process. So just like the bottom, just like the tops here, I'm making sure that my curve matches that initial circle that I drew. All right, so this is a horizontal line. Horizontal lines match the tops of our buildings, or our initial shape. All right, so, and then again, vertical lines go to the vanishing point. Vertical lines, vanishing point. Horizontal lines reference the tops of our buildings, or the initial shapes, however you want to think of them. Now, this last type of window that I'm going to show you all how to do here on this inside building is going to be apartment windows. Now, for apartment windows, you're going to need to do a combination of everything that we just did. All right, so these are the hardest type of windows, but I think they look good. All right, so you saw me make my tick marks, and again, I am now doing vertical lines. So that is something going up from the ground to the sky, and I'm making sure I'm connecting them to the vanishing point. All right, so vertical lines go to the vanishing point. I'm just trying to reiterate so you all can kind of get that in your head. That's an important rule to remember in this. So after I draw my vertical lines, you're going to see me draw my horizontal lines. And again, horizontal lines are going to reference the top of our building, or that first initial shape. All right, so you're just drawing parallel lines, and you're going to make them closer together as you go down. So you see me doing that here. All right, and what this does is this essentially makes a grid. And when we make apartment windows, we're going to single out specific ones that we want. So you're going to see me go over and darken specific squares that I want to keep. All right, so this can be a little bit time consuming. All right, so that's why this is the hardest window, is you're going to be kind of doing vertical lines, horizontal lines, and then picking out just specific areas of that and darkening those. And after I finish darkening the ones that I want to keep, you'll see me erase any remaining lines. And you don't really have to use that much pressure, especially if you're drawing light. And don't worry about erasing some of those squares a little bit. All right, they're darker now than everything else, so you'll be able to see them to draw them back no problem. All right, so that is the 4 different types of windows. I would encourage you to use a wide variety of them in your cities. They're going to look a lot better if you utilize all 4 of these. I would not just use one particular type, because then all of your buildings are going to end up blending in with each other. All right, so you'll see on mine, I actually make sure to use a different type of window on, or make sure that the same type of window isn't used on buildings right next to each other. And that just kind of helps with the aesthetic of the city and make it pop a little bit more. All right, so I'm gonna speed this footage up. You're gonna see me finish these last outside buildings here, and then we'll move on to the next step. We are now on step 6. That's going to be drawing the rooftops. So the first thing you see me doing here is I'm going to just kind of create a smaller shape on the inside of this square here. All right, so we're starting with the easiest building first, and just creating a small little ledge. Now what we're going to do next is, unlike our first step here, all right, so these first 3 corners that we took to the vanishing point, now those would cut through our building. So we're actually not going to do anything with that. But this outside corner, all right, so we're going to connect that to the vanishing point, and that's going to help us to create a small little wall that creates the illusion of a 3-dimensional ledge on this rooftop. All right, so this goes a long way. This is one of my favorite steps because it really makes it look like there is some depth on that rooftop there and that it's not just a flat shape. All right, so I'm going to now move on to our circle. So you get to see me struggle drawing a circle again. Now, the first thing we're going to do, regardless of the shape on this step, is always draw a smaller little shape that leaves a small little ledge. That is the very first thing to do when you're drawing a rooftop. Always remember that. That's an important step. If you do that, you're going to really be well off. All right, now on the circle here, I'm just going to kind of go from the halfway mark and create a small little crescent moon, essentially. All right, so anytime you're dealing with organic shapes, you just kind of go at the halfway mark and just follow your angles. All right, so there's really nothing too complex about the organic shapes. Now, you'll see me do the square next. Still kind of keeping the footage real time so that you can see this, starting with that initial ledge like I've mentioned, all right, or the smaller shape, leaving a little ledge. All right, and then I'm going to go on those corners farthest from the vanishing point and draw just a small little wall. So you see me stop there, just 2 small little lines on the back there. And then after I have those lines, I'm going to connect and make sure that those bottom lines of the walls just run parallel, all right, with the other part of the rooftop. So everything just needs to run parallel to connect. So I'm going to speed this footage up. You'll see me here on this other organic shape. Once I make that ledge, I just kind of go at the halfway mark and again, just kind of follow that angle there. And those are pretty simple. All right, so I'm going to catch you on the next step. All right, we're down to step 7. This is the last step. This is additional details, so this is going to be a little advanced. Some of this stuff's really easy. We are starting off pretty simple, and that is air conditioning units. Just think of those as small buildings. All right, so you're just going to draw a square, And then from the corners closest to the vanishing point, you're going to, with your straight edge, draw a line connected to the vanishing point. Now you see me, obviously I'm stopping and creating very small lines. That's because this is a very small little unit. You don't want those going all the way down. All right, and then just like the bottoms of our buildings, we're gonna reference the top of that initial square we drew and draw parallel lines to that at the bottom. All right, so staying true to our anything that is vertical is referencing the vanishing point, and anything that is horizontal is referencing our initial shapes, or the tops of the buildings, however you want to look at it. I'm just going to draw one more little unit here, just drawing that initial square wherever I want it, and then using my straight edge to connect those corners closest to the vanishing point to the vanishing point. But again, I'm stopping short because it is just an air conditioning unit, and it does need to sit on the rooftop. So at the bottoms, one more time, I am looking to make parallel lines that are running at the same angle as the top of that air conditioning unit. So now moving on to a smokestack, we're going to work a little backwards this time. So I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to connect the right and left sides of that circle to the vanishing point, and I'm going to go up. All right, so you see me drawing lines up, and then I'm just trying to draw another little circle at the top of that particular smokestack. You'll see me grab my eraser in just a second to erase any lines on the inside. All right, so that is to make sure that that smokestack is in front of the wall that's behind it. All right, so we don't want lines running through that. So you see me do that there. I'm gonna clean some stuff up here in just a second and draw one little line on the back, just like we did on the rooftops of our organic shapes. All right, just starting kind of halfway and making a little crescent moon, all right, to make that look like it's a little more 3D. I'm gonna do one more little smokestack. All right, so again, we're starting with a circle and working backwards. So we're going to line up to the edge of that circle and draw a line up with our straight edge, making sure we're connected to the vanishing point. This is the point where I normally have students just kind of start to ignore the vanishing point. And if you do, your city may look amazing, all right, but then your details are gonna make everything look flat. All right, so you still wanna make sure that you're referencing that vanishing point. Essentially, the bottoms of any of your shapes should be smaller than the top. All right, everything should get bigger as it goes up. And that's just how 1 point perspective works from the bird's eye view. All right, so I am now believe I'm going to move on, and I'm going to show you how to draw a skyscraper. So I'm going to erase this initial little air conditioning unit, and we're going to work backwards again. So I'm going to draw a shape. So I'm just drawing a little square that matches our initial square. And then you're going, just like with the smokestacks, you're going to see me line up with my straight edge from the corners, but this time I'm going to draw my lines up. So you can see me lining up on that first initial corner. I draw up, going on the outside there. I'm going to draw up. I like to hold my ruler so I can make sure I see what I'm drawing. I don't like for my ruler or straight edge, whatever I'm using, to cover anything that I am needing to see. All right, so I use that there. You're gonna see me tweak some of my lines a little bit to make sure that they're connected. So now I'm drawing the top. All right, so now in this particular case, you're gonna see me erase some lines that I know I don't need anymore. So I'm just erasing any lines that are on the inside of this shape that we've just drawn. All right, so I'm gonna darken some of my lines back, and I'm about to add the top of this particular shape, and it matches the bottom. So that line I just drew runs parallel with that initial line towards the bottom that we just drew. And that other one I just drew, same deal. All right, so it's just matching the bottom. Now that line is just matching I'm just kind of closing the shape off. All right, so I'm just making my square, closing my square. So that is how you essentially draw a building on top of a building. The reason you do that backwards is because if you don't, you're not guaranteed that building or that extension is going to fall perfectly where you want it to. So that's why I like to do that backwards. And so now you just see me doing some previous steps that we've already went over. I'm just adding a rooftop to that new addition. So starting with that ledge, and then using the corner, going to the vanishing point, and then just to do the walls, or the bottoms of those walls, I'm just running parallel. And I'm just gonna add this air conditioning unit here. The last step that we're going to do here, the last additional detail that I'm about to teach you all after I add these windows, is going to be a billboard. All right, but as we're waiting here, I just want to review a couple things. So you see me doing the windows, and again, I'm making some vertical lines. Vertical lines follow the vanishing point on anything we're doing. And then if I'm drawing horizontal lines on anything, so anything that would be running this way, is going to be referencing the top of our building, or the very initial shapes that we drew. So just some things to be remembering as you're doing this process. So hopefully you've been able to follow along a little bit, but I understand if you've just kind of had to watch, and this is something that you might have to try a little later. Normally I would do this in steps and allow time in between each step, but I am limited to 30 minutes. All right, so this is something that would normally take, I would normally take probably 2 hours to do, all right, just to allow time for practice on each step. All right, so now we're about to move on to the billboard. And we're gonna start with our circles. So this is smokestack. All right, so the poles of our billboard just create a smokestack. So you're just gonna start with a small little circle, work up from the vanishing point. You're gonna see me do that, and then I'm going to erase the lines that go through those. All right, so you want those, you don't want any lines going through them, just like with the smokestack. But then you're gonna see me draw a line that cuts through this and serves as the bottom of our billboard. All right, so now I'm drawing that line that I talked about. You'll see me do a little bit of erasing here in just a second, just to clean everything up. Make sure I'm getting rid of the lines that I know I don't need. I like to erase stuff that I know I don't need as I go. All right, I would strongly encourage you to be erasing as you're going so that you don't get too confused. It's really easy if you don't erase lines as you go to get confused in any sort of linear perspective. All right, so now you see me doing the sides of our buildings, or the size of the billboard rather, and it is something that is vertical going up from the ground to the sky. So I'm referencing the vanishing point. And then for the top of my billboard here, I'm referencing just that bottom line, making sure that runs parallel. And then for the top, I'm just gonna kind of draw a line at an angle on each side, and then a line that runs parallel to that line I just drew that serves as the top of the billboard. All right, now the last thing I'm gonna do is show you how to do lettering. Lettering is very simple. You just got to make sure you're following the rules of the perspective. So you're going to see me kind of section off 3 little areas for letters here. And I like to do that to make sure that everything is even. If you do one letter and then you move on to the next and you don't section out first, you might find yourself running out of space, or you might find everything is uneven. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to block out 3 little squares and try to make sure that they're as even as possible before I ever draw any sort of letters in them, or symbols, whatever you're doing. I'm doing letters here, you can do a symbol. All right, but you can see those lines that are vertical are still going to the vanishing point. So I'm still following my rules, even on letters. All right, if you don't, it's gonna, again, look off. So make sure you're following those rules. If you don't, you'll have something look a little weird about your drawing. All right, so you can see I have 3 little squares. So I'm just gonna draw an E. So the horizontal letters here just need to make sure that they're parallel with the top and the bottom of this billboard shape. All right, so vertical lines that I'm drawing, I'm still making sure that I'm not using my straight edge, but I am making sure that they're still running down to the vanishing point. All right, so once I finish this E up, I'm gonna move on to the N and then do the D, and that is the end of this lesson. All right, so I hope that you have enjoyed this. Once I finish up with this particular billboard, I am going to run the steps through one more time. I'm not going to talk over them, but I just want to make sure that that's something that you could write down if you didn't get to do that earlier. All right, so 7 simple steps to draw a city in 1-point perspective. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope that you find this useful, something fun to do during our time off. All right, wishing you guys the best. Stay safe.